And before we begin, here is a quick word from our president, Carla Jansen.
Hi, everyone. Great to see such a large crowd tonight. I'm so excited to introduce you to our fall series here at the IIBA Winnipeg. We have lots of awesome events planned. Today, we have with us Deirdre Caren, who's joining us all the way from the other side of the world over in New Zealand. And she's going to be talking to us about one of likely the most popular subject in today's world, AI, and how this can help with our jobs as business analysts. So before we allow Deirdre to teach us about this subject, just a little bit of a preview of what's coming up. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I encourage everyone to take a look at scanning this QR code on your phone. This is going to bring you to our next event, which is happening in just a few short weeks. It is a case competition. So this is an in-person event in Winnipeg, downtown Winnipeg in the Exchange District. We are so excited to have this event this year. It's going to be very hands-on. You're going to have a ton of real-life experience to be able to learn a case, to be able to make decisions, make negotiations, work with team members. There's going to be prizes. There's going to be food. There's absolutely no reason that you should not be attending this. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys signing up right after this here. So I'll post the link in the chat. But from there, I'm excited to pass this over to Deirdre. So why don't you take it ahead?
Thank you very much. I'm going to just quickly share my screen. Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it. I also want to just reach out to my team, Brad and Lara and Andre and everybody who's helped facilitate a lot of this. So it's not done completely on my own. And let me just find the screen. Okay. Doesn't seem to want to. Oh, there we go. It's working. So before I go into too much detail, how many people are currently using ChatGPT or there's many, one of them to help with their requirements? Anyone want to mention what they're doing at the moment? I don't know if everyone can speak. Maybe just put your hands up.
So I can speak here, Carla, again. I like using ChatGPT and other services to kind of do some preliminary research. And I also like using it to kind of get my words together for lengthy presentations or for stuff like proposals, where sometimes I have all the facts, but I don't necessarily have the words to put it together.
Yeah, it's really good at that. Obviously, you have to check it because sometimes it goes a little bit crazy with those kind of things.
Very true.
Yeah. Okay, so I see Betty Lynn, you're looking at research in ChatGPT. And like I said, it's a good place to start with ChatGPT. There are other models as well that you might want to have a look at, like Anthropic. I use Poe. There are a few options, and I'll talk through that in a little bit. But I want to, when we talk about AI, it's going to be really important to understand that AI is a language. So for those, I don't know who's done ECBA, CCBA, or CBAB, but for those, the language that you use, the way that you write requirements, etc., is really important. So we use terms like it needs to be atomic, it needs to be concise, etc. So as a language model, it is interpreting what you're asking it for, and it's giving you feedback based on that. So to really understand how to get the best and create requirements from AI, I'm going to talk about a little bit around business architecture, and I'm going to talk about business analysis very briefly. I'll go through what that list is, but you will get to see AI in action, so don't worry. We just got to do a few steps before then, so everyone's on the same page. So my name is Deirdre Caren. I'm the founder of Agora Insights. We have about 11,000 learners, business analysts and business architects, and we work in over 96 countries now. And particularly the analysts, the pain that you feel at your local space is global. I haven't seen any business analysts not have the same pain with doing requirements and capturing stakeholder needs and projects that change and don't have good scopes and all of those things. So the good news is you're all in the same boat. I'm not sure that the boat is ideal, but at least you're in the same boat. All right, so we have worked with multiple organizations. So we've been running now for nearly 7 years, and from good old Christchurch, New Zealand. So really small place with a big influence. So what are we going to cover today? So firstly, we'll look at what is business architecture. We'll look at what business architects do, and we'll look at how to effectively use AI for requirements. And as I mentioned, we have to understand some of the components of AI before we just start typing requirements. And obviously there's a Q&A session. Now, I don't know how many of you have done any architecture before, business architecture. If you have, please put it in the chat just so I can get an idea of those who've had some experience. But all businesses have architecture. Not all businesses have been architected. So I'm going to use some examples of a house. So when you're building a house, or when you buy a house, you'll know the difference between a designed house and a house that was maybe just built by a couple of friends. And that's pretty normal in New Zealand, get together and kind of build a house. And the design in that does change over time. Sorry, I need to check something. I think I loaded the wrong file, but okay, we can carry on. All right, so what do business analysts do? Now, I like to say business analysts, what we do is we look at deep diving into the requirements. We want to know what's wrong. So we almost like investigative journalists. If you think about it, you are working to understand, well, what happened and how do I communicate this with the business? And, what was the reason for it? What do we need to change? And we need to then give a set of requirements to the organization. That's what we do, but we deep dive into these different areas. Whereas in business architecture, we look at the ecosystem. We want to know what is the landscape of the business. So there you've got a BA investigating one little part of the business, but then you might have another BA investigating a different part. And so when we are doing requirements, we need to understand the context of the requirements. And if we are repeating them, if we are running duplicate projects, and this happens, so you'll have a CRM system and then a different team is doing the same thing. So when we look at business analysis and business architecture, in architecture, we look at the breadth. What is the key things that we need to understand in business architecture or in our business? And for business analysts, you look at the depth. You want to know specifically what needs to change in that specific space. So for most of us, our systems kind of look pretty much like this. They're nasty. They don't really, it's quite hard to understand what is happening within the business. There's so many systems, so many people doing different things, and it can be a real challenge working in that space. So it's BA Day soon. That's coming up on the 1st of November for those celebrating the work of a business analyst. And last year, the post was, what does a business analyst do? So someone who does precision guesswork based on unreliable data provided by those with questionable knowledge. To which Daniel Lambert, a close colleague and friend, said, sounds less accurate if a decent architecture was in place. Yeah, I know. To assist business analysts with their description of requirements, epics, and user stories. So when we look at architecture, what we're doing is we're looking at the ecosystem. So we're looking at the macro view of the business. What does the business do? And I want you to think with AI, what does the context need to be for AI to give you good requirements, right? It's not human. It won't understand your understanding. That has to be communicated. So with architecture, we look at the macro view of the business. What are our policies? Who are our suppliers? Who are our partners? Who are our competitors? And we look at what that ecosystem looks like. At the strategic level, we look at what we would call, in some instances, targeted capabilities. We'll look at the things that we need to improve on. We'll look at supporting policies and maybe making changes if they're required, and looking at the current state as well as deriving the future state. So if you are busy studying Babok Chapter 6 talks about strategy analysis. So with architects, they often help create the strategy, whereas analysts usually analyze the strategy as per Babok. So at the program level, this is where we look at the multitude of initiatives. So not just one project, but if you're using things like SAFe or other frameworks, what you're doing is you're looking at the initiatives that need to occur and what are the relationships with those initiatives. And then at your lowest level, although super important, here what you're looking to do is wanting to understand how the ecosystem, down to the detail, what does the project need? And usually this is where the BA and the BARC work really close together because they're working on understanding the actual needs of the organization. And so we start off with this big picture, and then we move through to understand the specific needs. Now, think of it this way. If you go to a library, a business architecture framework is giving you the knowledge about the organization. So it's saying, and so it's like a library. It's got a set of information that makes your business unique. And this is what we have in what we term a knowledge base in business architecture. So a knowledge base is really to help us understand what makes us, what is our information, what do we need to do? Whereas what business analysts do is usually investigate and analyze a specific component of that knowledge. So you'd want to understand, okay, these are the things that we need to do in the project, and therefore we need to investigate a certain aspect of how our business is performing. And so we'll go to the knowledge base and we will look up and research and analyze. Now, I know most of us don't actually have a knowledge base, whether there's architecture or not architecture. So this is why you have to do interviews and workshops and all of those types of things. There is document analysis as well. And so it's in this transition that AI is really going to be helpful for you. So you need to think of this information and how that information relates to kind of what we do as business analysts. And you need to understand what we're doing. What does AI need? What information does AI need to produce good results, right? It also needs good instructions, but also it needs to work off good data. So we often talk about the wisdom pyramid. And so in most organizations, we've got lots of data, not always good data, but we have data. And what we try to do by creating processes and various other things is we try capture information, and information is connecting different parts of data. And then we should have something that I call the knowledge brief. As a BA, we are translating all this information that we have in the business into something we can use so that the business can make good decisions, right? So they have enough information to work with. Business architects do the same thing. They just probably work on more of at the strategic macro level, whereas analysts would look at the details that would be required and therefore the requirements. AI, similarly, needs to have a set of data to work, and it's really good at this space if you give it good information and good prompts to work with. But it won't be able to give you knowledge. Remember, that's the context, that's the understanding of what we do in our organization. And this is why you're not going to lose your job anytime soon. But it can speed up this process that we go through with trying to find information all the time. So I'm going to give you a quick demonstration. Well, first just going to tell you about the rules of AI and then show you how to build your requirements. So AI requires context. So at the beginning of this discussion, I talked about the breadth and depth. It needs to understand your business. And we are business analysts or business architects, and we need to understand the business. That's our job. AI needs to understand the business too, because otherwise it'll just make really crazy assumptions and it won't be really good outputs. It needs to understand its role. For those who have tried ChatGPT, because it has a generic role, it doesn't know if it's a marketer, if it's a salesperson, if it's a teacher. It doesn't understand the context of the information that you are getting from it. Definitely needs to understand the principles of architecture. It needs to understand structured output. So what do you want from me? I think AI might be asking those questions. And then it needs to create containers or requirements. So it needs to understand what information is required in order to get requirements. And it needs good inputs to frame the architecture. So the information that you share it is going to be as good as the information you get out of it. So here's a quick demonstration. So hopefully everyone can see this, but I have taken our business architecture and I've used a fictional case called Supreme Coffee, a coffee shop in New Zealand that wants to franchise globally. And I've asked it to create a set of requirements. Now in Babcock, in Babcock, we would look at the requirements framework. So we would have the business requirements, which is the high level requirements. And so this is kind of an architectural view of the high level business requirements. So I've asked it to create that, and let's get started. So these are the main things that we need to know about the business. And the project is to update the brand. So this is what we're trying to do. And so now it's looking through our architectural knowledge base, and it is deciding how to update the brand. So what are the main things we need to know? And what are the capabilities that we need to have? What is the key information? And then what business unit would be involved and what stakeholders would be involved? So much quicker than trying to figure that out, right? And doing a stakeholder analysis. I'm just going to go back 1 second. And then I asked it from that business requirement to create 20 user stories. Now I want you to notice the traceability that we have here for those who use traceability. And it's done a really good job. It's understood the context of my business, well, the fictional business. It's understood, the different stakeholders. And now I've asked it to create acceptance criteria on one user story. Remember, everything we do is functional decomposition. So using the architecture and the strategies and all of that, it's now doing this. So it's said the acceptance criteria, the brand guidelines document exists containing visual identity. So it's telling all of the things that are needed to update our brand to be more global. And that's the project level that we're dealing with. And so I was pretty happy with the acceptance criteria for one user story, because AI is not good at doing lots of things at the same time. You get diminished information. Then I've asked it to create functional requirements based on the acceptance criteria, because that's the triangle we work with. You need the acceptance criteria to understand the functions that need to be performed from the user stories. And as you can see, it's got traceability. So it says this is coming from the acceptance criteria 1, and this is how it works. And then I've asked it to create non-functional requirements. Okay, it's still going through what I've just discussed. And here I've asked it, you can see it's looking at the acceptance criteria, and it can pick up how much of the acceptance criteria. Now I asked it to not only do system requirements. This is important. We need to do more than just systems, especially in non-functional. And your chatbots do have a propensity to be biased towards systems. So you have to be very careful about that. And it's created now requirements that are beyond system requirements. Like, for instance, franchise partners shall nominate employees to be brand ambassadors. These are the types of things, and they're really good ideas, understanding what we're doing. Brand differentiation, index scoring, average brand awareness, and so forth. And then I've asked it to do transitional requirements based again on the single user story. So this is where we're decomposing. Oh, sorry, I asked it for additional user stories. I just wanted to see how many, and I've noticed you can do hundreds of user stories of a single high-level business requirement. And get in there. Okay, so there are options, like in most of it, it'll prompt you to do further things. Now I have asked it to create a value stream, which is a business architectural concept. It's not a process map, but it has similarities. And so using our high-level business requirements, we are now creating a process. And this process Let me just pause. So in this process, we now know that we want to deliver consistent brand experience. These are the stakeholders that would be involved at a high level. So we're starting to create an initiative. This is where we're going with this. These are the value stages that we will obtain, and then what value will be delivered and what capabilities would be utilized. And so it's been really good in understanding, okay, at a high level, these are the steps we need to take to update our brand. And this is how it's impacting the architecture. And so now I've said, take the user stories and cross-map that with the value stream. So this is almost like the future state, right? Cross-map that with the future state. What would be required to have this new brand that we are developing? So in this, as you can see, it is now said, these would be the user stories that you would need at these stages of developing your brand. And I haven't validated or verified it. It looked pretty good to me. But of course, as an analyst, you would have to analyze it and you'd have to validate and verify it. And so now it's gone through the different stages. And of course, I've trained the bot to act like this. GPT is not necessarily going to do that, but it is very helpful, as you can see, when you train your bots. And then I asked it, how long do you estimate implementing this will take in the project, considering, and I've asked it to consider the number of stakeholders we have in our architecture. So it has now done some processing. And there it says, with 10 core stakeholders, it should take about 6 months. And with up to 40 stakeholders, it would take, so these are how many people would be affected by it, should take up to 12 months to implement. And then it gives you a rough order of magnitude. So around how much or how long this would take. And so I quite liked where it was going here. And I decided to use the 10 core stakeholders and not focus on getting as many. And so then I asked it to take the 10 stakeholders and provide an estimate of what the tasks would be for this project. So what would everybody need to be doing in this project? So again, we've got our requirements. We haven't gone back to our solution requirements, but we have our user stories as requirements. And there it said the brand manager would be doing these things, the marketing team. And by the way, they use business units, which means that it would be more than just one person. It will be a team that would be doing different things. So it's already figured out what the team is doing. So that was pretty good. Then I asked it to provide an initiative roadmap. So show me the different phases of what it would take to change the brand at Supreme Coffee. And so we'll just, so phase 1, phase 2, 6 months, as you can see, it's looking at some initiative goals and it's looking at the stakeholders. And by this time, all done in 8 minutes, that was business architecture through to requirements, through to an initiative, through to a rough order of magnitude, how long something would take. Of course, the analyst now would have to go and analyze all of this information and go and verify it and check it. But now it becomes much easier to run workshops of something, some information. Remember, we want to have the information that's within our organization without sharing sensitive information. And this is why people also use things outside of the organization. So before I go into the next slide, are there any questions around this?
Manuel has a couple of questions. Manuel, do you want to speak up right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, yeah, thank you. I guess one of the questions I had early, I think, just around the estimates that you were talking about now, generating estimates, is that are those estimates based off of what a project should take, or is it off of what a project should take because it's gathering information specific to your organization? How is that, how does it come up with that number, I guess?
It's based on the organization. So when looking at the business architecture, we've provided information and some insights into the business, right? So, and it doesn't have to be exhaustive. So not like data, but remember AI is pretty smart. It's based on all this history that we have. So it can make some assumptions, but this is why as a BA, you will need to validate that and go, hey, do we have any other projects? And in that case, it would be good to then feed AI some feedback back and go, okay, in these projects, this is how long it took and this is how much it cost. Now update what you're doing because these don't match. So I've just used it from an architectural point of view at this stage as demonstration purposes, but it would take a little bit more time than 8 minutes.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Cool.
I do have a question. This is Amara.
Hi, Amara.
Yeah, so when you tell AI, like ChatGPT, to generate the requirements, you have to tell it in a specific way. What if you don't want user stories?
I use user stories and I've programmed the bot that way, but you can do other things too, and you can write it in a different way. You can use requirements. Like if you looked at what we did with functional and non-functional, they weren't written as user stories. They were written just as standard requirements. So AI, it just depends what you teach in it. You got to think of it. I call it my babies, right? You have to train it and you have to tell it what you want, and it can produce it in a format that you want. So you're not limited to user stories. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. So clearly, just letting know how you want it, the format you want it.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you.
No worries. Betty Lynn?
Hey, Deirdre. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Someone on the line.
So much.
Okay.
I was just wondering, how long does it take to train a bot, and what is the process of training a bot?
It depends on which one you're using. There's multiple tools that you can consider. It usually doesn't take a long time, but it depends on what type of information you're processing. So if you're just doing simple things, you should, okay, let me put in context. I've been training my bots for 10 months, but I'm getting them to do complex things. Whereas if you're just training a simple task, you could probably train it really properly in about a week. The ideal situation is not to use a general AI for this. The ideal situation would be if your organization had something, then you would use that because it's learning from you then, rather than everyone in the world, 100 million people or something like that. So it does depend on the bot that you use. That is a big factor. But yeah, and again, depending on what you're doing. It doesn't take as long as 10 months, but with the changes that have happened over the last year, it is astounding. Recently, I mean, they're now adding, it can recognize images. So if you send it a process model, it'll know what that process model is and it'll describe it to you. It's astounding the growth that has occurred over the last just the last 10 months. So I think it's best to have a play. Hopefully that answers your question, Betty Lynn. There's a bit of a scale depending on what you're choosing.
And what was your process for teaching the bot?
You have to create you've got to teach it what you do. So you have to, it's not difficult, it's writing it. It's called prompt engineering. So you can have a look, you can look that up, but you're teaching it around what you're expecting from it. And so it's typically a set of instructions, business rules, etc., roles that you would teach it to be able to perform what you're expecting from it, so that it doesn't think it's a salesperson when you're doing requirements. Dominique?
Yeah.
Dominic? Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. So my question was, when you mentioned about the confidentiality aspect and you don't really want to give away the bot, the business or whatever, but at the same time you wanted to give targeted results and you are teaching the bot, but essentially when you are interacting with it, it's learning from you because you are saying, okay, this is, what meets my expectation, and then you're taking what it gives, and if you're discarding something, then obviously the bot is going to learn from that. So all in all, sorry, I'm going all over the place, but
Okay.
all in all, like the more information you feed the bot, isn't it more riskier that, like, in that terms, it's getting exposure to your business processes? So that's where I wanted to kind of link it. And also, how can we make it, or what do we need to keep in mind to make it generic enough?
Right. All right. So these are great questions. There are two options you can consider. The one is you can create a fictional case and work in a situation like ChatGTP, where that information is shared amongst the public. So, well, the bots uses it and make it up, right? So that it's not your proprietary information, but you're getting some insights that you might need. The other option is to build a custom bot, and there's many applications that can do it, which is what we're doing at the moment, to train it specifically around your business. So it depends if your business is using AI at the moment, but you can customize the bot itself to perform different things. And in that case, you'd have to give it very specific information that you want it to analyze. But you still want to keep it high level because you don't want to bombard it. It has limitations as to how much data it can read. So it's got data in its head, let's say, but it has limits in its processing. So you want to give it the information that it needs to give you what you need in that case.
But companies are still hesitant in using bots, right? Like, for example,
Yeah,
they started it and then backed out.
It was like cloud, right? Before people moved to cloud, everyone was worried and everything was on PCs and, stayed in the office and that type of thing. There's hesitancy and there's good reason for it. But there are ways around it. If you build it internally into the organization, then it doesn't go outside. It just brings the bot's brain and the bot works in your organization. It doesn't feed back to the global area. Okay. Dapo, Lana, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Dapo is just fine. Yeah. So mine is just a simple and quick one. When you started this example, I know that you began with the business architecture by informing the board of the business architecture. So I just want to know, do you write the business architecture maybe in a Word document or an Excel document, and then you upload it onto the board? Because what I know with ChatGPT right now is that you type your question and you send it, and then you get some responses. So how did you do that?
So when you create a custom bot, you can upload information up front, and you can do it in various formats. ChatGTP and those type of ones only can really take Word documents at this stage. So they don't really do spreadsheets. Of course, you can have a database, but like I said, there's some limitation as to how much you can upload. I know ChatGTP with Copilot allows you to upload spreadsheets and then ask it a question and get some feedback from there. So it depends what model you're using, I suppose, is the answer. But typically, most models only use Word documents for the type of thing I'm describing here, which is your chat outputs. But it's changing all the time. Okay. All right. Is it possible to retrain the bot? Yes, you can retrain the bot if you've messed up or it's messed up. Basically, it's a reset. So you have to consider that as well. It's not too bad. Like, it keeps history, but it forgets now it's got new rules. So it can be a little frustrating. And sometimes that retraining, you're like, oh, I just did all of this, and now I've got to kind of refresh its profile. From your experience, how receptive are business? There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of caution. I think by next year, businesses who don't start incorporating it are going to start feeling it. So I think there's more than you think. To be honest, I think everyone's just trying to figure it out first and trying to figure out what they need to have or use in order to get the best outputs for their organization. Hopefully that answers that question. All right, so let me just quickly go to the last bit. So what can you get and what you cannot get from AI? So AI, it's amazing. I think it's a game changer, and I advise all BAs to look into it. If you think it's not going to be real, you're missing some critical part of your work, because remember, you're a knowledge worker, and AI is helping you acquire that knowledge quicker. So what it cannot do is it has difficulty in understanding complexity. Now, this will improve. Over the last 10 months of me actively working basically every day on AI models, it has improved significantly, but it still doesn't understand things like hierarchies and what's more important. So it's good at structuring data, but it sometimes forgets who's in charge and who's not. When you build a table incrementally, like let's say you have a couple of rows and a couple of columns, and then you keep adding to that, it gets really confused after a while. It can't handle the amounts of data, and it starts falling over. And so then you have to almost start a new chat, which was super frustrating. My temper wasn't going very well, but that's the limitation, and that's because it has a token limitation. The amount of text it can push through is limited. AI repeated certain mistakes, so even if I corrected it, it kind of goes, it's called hallucinating. So it kind of rethinks that and goes, oh no, I still want this. And it changes it again. So that was really frustrating. And so, as I mentioned, as the bigger the tables got, or the set of information, AI performance started degrading significantly. Sometimes it would just give me a word, as an answer, not even a sentence. So there are definitely limitations in that. And then if we look at some of the good things, so despite the challenges, this is going to speed up your work. It's gonna be it really is a game changer. The AI is growing and learning very quickly. So you will have to keep framing your context. So for those who understand the BACM says, what is the problem? What is the need? What is the solution? Who are the stakeholders? What's the value, etc. That's called framing. So although you won't do that exactly like that, the concept is that you have to frame the role and what the bot is doing, because as AI keeps growing, it keeps growing as well, and it kind of brings in random things sometimes. A deep understanding of business architecture principles is really important in order for you to be able to understand, does it still understand the environment of the organization and it hasn't gone somewhere else? And then while AI like ChatGPT is a really valuable tool, it's not going to replace your job anytime soon. But I do want to caution business analysts, as I mentioned earlier, please don't think that you wouldn't need to do this in the near future. It certainly is something that's going to be a reality in businesses very, very soon. So learning things like prompt engineering, or asking the right questions, or positioning what you need to do is going to be super important. So we do still have challenges, like we need to protect our data, and therefore organizations would need to have access to, chatbots and be able to know that they're not sharing their proprietary information. And it's not all just, I think there was a case, I don't know who it was, Samsung, I think, where some of their team were just putting it all on ChatGPT and that data could be found. So yeah, you have to be careful too. But like I said, make up a fictional case and have a play. Try it out and see what comes out of it and get started that way. It's not difficult for BAs. This is what you do with people all the time. So there's no reason not to try using something like ChatGPT to get you going, to understand what you could get out of it in the end. Some people use AI on their phones. It depends what vendor, if you want to call it that, is using, because like if you use something like Poe or some of those, you can download it and you can do the chats, but it depends what the purpose is. Like, I think if you're doing requirements on your phone, that's not going to be awesome. But if you are doing something, like if you just want to find out where a local shop is, or what's the best place to eat, or I need a recipe, then yeah, it makes a lot of sense to have that on your phone. It certainly will be super helpful. And I do find things like recipes, like let's say you tell it what you have in the fridge, and then it will give you a whole bunch of options that you could consider using. Just simple things like that are also really helpful. All right, so that's me in terms of AI and looking at, using AI like ChatGPT for prompting. Oh, and like I said, I forgot to show you this other one. Now, I'm just going to tell you, and hopefully you'll just get a link. We do have free bots that you can try out. So if you go to our website, we've got a CCBA, CBAP, and ECBA bot to help you learn and prepare for your exams. This is done through a third party, and so we don't earn anything out of it, but you have to go through our site, get the link, and start using it. If you want to use the more advanced models like ChatGPT 4, then you have to pay the vendor, not us, the vendor. But you can also use the free one, and you can start playing with AI there. So if you go to our site, go to one of the courses, doesn't matter which one, you'll get access to the free bots. Dominic?
I actually signed up for your CBAP course.
Oh, good.
Yeah, which is why when I saw, IIBA Winnipeg was hosting a workshop, I was curious enough to attend, and also just wanted to give you a shout out. I've not started, I've started with the videos, but then I went back to the book and just wanted to read it from cover to cover before I, start working on that. But seems like fun. I'll reach out to you if I need something from in that regard. So again, you said I could even use the bot that you've created there to help with the study. So can you give some example of how I can use it? That'll be great.
So in our course, we have some materials, like for instance, the BAVOC study guide, which, not the study guide, the summary guide. So you can upload that into our bot, and you can ask it to explain, let's say, chapter 3.1, and it'll give you a full understanding with a use case to explain what that means in BAVOC. And obviously it depends on the type of model you're using, because if you're using the free one, there are limitations on the model. It's not us teaching it, it's the model itself that has the limitations. But it is really, it is just helpful. Now, I always advise, go back to the BAVOC and check if it's correct. And if the bot has done it wrong, you have to tell it it's done a bad job. But that's a great way of learning as well. So it really does help, when you ask the bot, tell me a use case for this, or how does this technique work? And then you go into the BAVOC and you look at that and you go, oh no, that's not quite the same. Or yes, that makes more sense now. So it's just another way to learn. Going through a course, you'll learn as well. But this is just another way to learn, and you'll start figuring out how it works as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Good. Further on the recipes topic, have you tried inputting current resources available and ask for lists of solution options? Yeah, I did a similar thing like that. I've done multiple tests. I've done strategy documents. I've done all kinds of things with my bots. And so you can basically do anything really. Just like Dominic and I were chatting now, like that bot has a specific purpose, which is to help you prepare for your exam. When you have those type of situations, you would potentially have a specific bot that would have a specific purpose to do, and not just use a generic bot. But you can do it like it is at the moment. Yeah.
So Deirdre, when you say you need specific bot for specific purpose, so for business analysis, like either you train your bot, or what is the other option? Like how do I search for specific bots that help me with use cases or requirements or business analysis work?
So in your organization, depending on what application you're using, whether it's like AWS or Azure or something like that, you can create multiple bots, and you can teach them to do something. And so you would use a bot that has a specific purpose because of its current limitations. In ChatGTP, you can't really do that. You can give it one single purpose, but then it's not going to do recipes if you're doing things like requirements. It's not going to be as good. It likes to have a purpose. So depending on what you have in your organization or what you're doing, is that would depend on the type of bot that you have, that you use in. So you got to almost think of the bot as not one thing, not ChatGTP. ChatGTP is almost like the database, if you want to call it that. I'm using loose words here, and then you have a function that does something, which is a chatbot, and it is contained to do certain things. And if you don't contain it, it just picks whatever it wants to pick. So that's what you need to do. So ChatGTP, is like one bot, but in an organization, you can customize your bot for you. Okay, so this is a good question. Joseph asked, do you think there is a risk in the future that AI could replace professionals in the BA field? Yeah, there is always a risk. There's lots of risks. And at the moment, AI cannot reason like a human. It just cannot. And remember, it's based on historic data. So there's a level of creativity. And I was speaking to people saying, what kind of skills would you need to have using this technology? Because remember, if you're good at documentation, so is AI, and probably better. But AI won't be good at coming up with things like being creative or looking at alternative things that haven't existed before. So you will need to have systems thinking. You'll need to understand ecosystems. You will need to be able to validate and verify that information and be very, very analytical about the information that you get from the bot. And so what I'm trying to say is, unless you really educate yourself and you become a really solid knowledge worker that's going to govern the bot, it's going to become very difficult when people are saying, but we can just get the same information we're getting from you from AI bot, so you have to lift your game. I don't think it's going to replace roles, but for those who are not doing a good job, there is a risk that they'll say, well, we actually need someone better because we need to do this faster. I think what will happen is projects will go faster. Again, I don't think it'll happen this year, but I think it's going to be really soon at the rate that the AI, even the guys who own these AI models are astounded at how fast it's learning, which is scary. But I don't think any knowledge worker who's worth their weight in gold is going to lose their job and they're going to get robots to do it. I mean, think about it this. Call centers, right? If you ask basic questions, your bot can give you basic answers and it's reasonably good, right? And you get the information you want. But the minute there's complexity, like you've got billing or you've had trouble logging in or something like that, the bot is unlikely to be able to help you because the complexity isn't yet understood. But again, who knows what's going to happen by next year? So what you're doing as an analyst is it's about your knowledge that you really are providing the organization and specifically the industry that you're working in. Okay, so maybe beyond the scope of today, so feel free to decline. What is essential in moving an organization towards leveraging technology? I'm always a show, don't tell. Find an example, show somebody, because it's really hard to motivate people on words and your enthusiasm. And it's one of the reasons why I show you the video, because the video is a great way for you to see the value of having AI. And I always say, if you want to bring it to your team, then let me know. We can set up a session with your business. But if you want to get things like this in your organization, copy success, show something that's working, and they'll see the benefits. And I know it's difficult because some of it's so new and you can't get exactly what you're looking for and how it's, going to help your organization. But certainly it is an easier way to get buy-in than trying to promote or sell the concept. Show them. If they're not interested, you get your answer straight away. If they are, then you start in a conversation. So it kind of is in scope, I suppose. All right, I think that's all the questions. I hope you've enjoyed this and you all signing up to ChatGTP at the moment and testing it out. Manuel?
This is fantastic. Thank you, Deirdre. Any questions? Oh, looks like Jeffrey's got a question here.
Is there a way or process to distinguish that the answers that AI is providing are not based on hallucinate? That's where you got to be smart and look at references. I also advise you to use multiple platforms. There's actually one called Poe. Not Poe, sorry. Perplexity. It's a long word. Don't ask me to spell it. I'm going to mess it up. But Perplexity gives you references. So it'll take you to source data like academic papers and websites. So you can validate some of that information to see if it's real or not real. So those are some things. But this is where you really need to be an analyst, and you really need to look at that and go, hang on, that's real junk. And then you need to tell the bot that's real junk, because bots like ChatGTP are learning off humans, and humans make mistakes, right? And then they kind of go in different directions, versus bots like Anthropic. They have their bots teach themselves, so they don't use humans to verify the information. So they all do different models, but that would be my advice, is make sure you know what's going on before you ask the question. You don't need the details, you just need to have an outline and a position in which you're working, and then use things like Perplexity. Great. Yeah, so super exciting field. I think you can, by next year, early next year, you're going to see some massive changes again. So, and I say to people, just play, play with it right now. It's not scary. You're not going to break anything. Try not to put in, your personal or your business data into an open platform. Try to be smart about that. But some things are very basic, like a simple requirement that's not specific to your organization is something that you can, test and try out and play with and do those kind of things. So just be smart about it, but have a play. Good. So I will stop the share.
This is great. Deirdre, this is wonderful. Thank you for that insight into the AI world. And I guess 2024 will bring forward some exciting new things for sure, and then onwards from here on.
100%, yes. And I'm super excited. I think for us who have struggled with documentation, finding information from people, having to have lots of long workshops, there is a real solution that we could start exploring now. And I think that's great. It's fantastic. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate all the arrangements. And like I said, for those who do want to try it out, please do try our free options we have out there. We want lots of people to join. And if you feel like connecting, I suppose, you guys will leave a link and that kind of stuff for people, I assume, if they want to link up with our team. Okay.
Great. Okay,
Good.
so Shubra, I think, is this a good moment to pause the recording and then we could move into the draw perhaps?